Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We decided to do a little pre-show tonight. And before we jumped on the air, I actually selfishly told Mitch and Justin here that I've been bored out of my mind. So we haven't left the house since 9 days ago, I think. I went to the grocery store once, but it's been interesting. And Mitch, I know you're still going into work, right?
Yeah, I have to work. It's one of those state jobs to where you have to come in no matter what.
I'm still working. Don't act like you're the only one working.
I actually have to go in and work.
Okay. Justin, what about you? Have you been able to stay home?
So I just got back from college yesterday because they kicked us out, which is kind of annoying. You know, like, I'm not happy.
Wait, where do you? I didn't know you were still in school. Where do you go?
Well, I'm a senior now, so I'm done with school. But I went to University of Albany, which is the capital of New York. Yeah, you know, I'm a biology major, so I'm going to be going to PA school in 2021.
Oh, fancy!
So that's my goal. Yeah,
you're a young buck.
I am a young buck.
you make Mitch look ancient over there.
A little bit.
Every week we jump on two. We have technical difficulties and jump on late. Last week it was Dan running late. Mitch, I'm guessing you spilled a beer over there.
Sure did.
Yeah,
I got a new one, so we're fine.
Yeah, you're fine. How many are you in this week? Because last week you thought Amari Cooper played for the Redskins.
I was envisioning him playing for the Redskins, but sadly I was just a little bit off. At least they were the team that was bidding against the Cowboys for him.
Yeah, they did make a push. So anybody that's watching right now, again, we just jumped on to do a pre-show, mainly out of boredom, and probably going to do this on a weekly basis, especially as long as this quarantine, self-isolation goes on, because I'm working from home with my wife and my 7-month-old son. My wife's going to kill me. We're at that point, and Dan, what are you doing? Dan's jumping in the chat. Just join us here, Dan. Come on. Jump on in. The water's warm. But again, yeah, so I see we have a few more people joining us. First half hour here, we're not really going to talk about football. I know everybody's
specific football.
Yeah, everybody's kind of cooped up here. At 9:00 Eastern, we're going to be doing the actual show and talking about football content. Until then, we're just going to kind of be bullshitting. This part of the show will not be making it to the iTunes feed here. I don't know if everybody notices my new haircut. My wife, I let her shave it. I have a full video, and I was going to do like a time lapse thing. So this makes me feel really old, but I didn't know that you could do a time lapse on your iPhone, like when you take the video. So I did a full video. I was like, oh, I'll do a time lapse. I can't figure out how to do it. I've tried different apps and it's not really working. So I was going to share that, but now I am not. Yeah. So Justin, when are you shaving your head? You have nice locks over there. You have the blowout going on.
Let's see. I used to have that kind of haircut back in high school, but thank God I stopped doing that. It wasn't the look for me. I had a buzz cut, now I have the pompadour look, I guess. I don't know. That's from FF Man Bun said
pompadour.
I think it's more of a flow kind of thing, I don't know. Now I can't get a haircut for a while because they all shut down in New York. So I got one on Saturday.
You know what you should do during your show? You should have your dad shave your head. During the father-son fantasy football show. I think that would be entertaining.
He's been always trying to want to shave my head ever since I started actually having hair. Dude, he's something. I don't know. He would love to do that. Don't even give him that idea. He would be all about it, and he would.
I'm going to be tweeting something out here shortly. And in the chat, we have somebody that says greetings from Barcelona. Wow. So what is it? 1:30? Is it 5 hours?
I can't snipe that. Maybe. I'll check.
Because I know, like London, they had the different daylight savings time. My uncle's living over there now, but
1:38 a.m.
What time is it?
It's 1:38 in the morning. Ooh,
dang,
late one.
Wow.
Is there a way to make like the screen bigger, like where I can see me and you two, or is it just always gonna be that small box? Or is it?
There's that.
That's just that. I don't know. I feel like there should be.
You need a bigger monitor.
There's this, but like nobody wants to see our faces.
Just like no, way too close.
I'm good.
Mitch, can you back up a little bit, please? And I was joking. So when I had my wife shave my head, like you never realize. Well, let me get in the picture. How like far back your hairline has receded. Like it's getting there. Like it's. Yeah. So we'll zoom out a little bit.
That's
Here.
better.
Yeah, that works. Right. I don't know. StreamYard's cool. I gotta start live streaming our podcast.
So we just we were doing audio for a while and then we started doing video, but we didn't release the video. And I think it's more interactive when there's video. And obviously like I love the live chat here. It kind of carried us through our show last week when I completely threw away the show notes. But I would say if anybody's doing a podcast, StreamYard, I like it a lot. They have a free version that it, in the top over there, it says like brought to you by StreamYard.
I guess it's that way, huh?
Yeah. But we paid a premium pretty much just to get our logo up there. I will say though, this is much better than Skype. And then what was the first one we used? Was it TriCast?
Yeah, it was TriCast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and TriCast was the first one. There was no stopping. You hit record and it didn't stop the entire time.
And I don't know anybody that listened to our first, 20 shows. I wouldn't even be done asking a question. And it really only popped up when we had guests, but I wouldn't even finish asking a question and their answer would be coming in. And the show that I really noticed it, actually, we had Liz Loza on and I was like halfway through a sentence and she started answering. And I was like, I was very disappointed. So immediately after that, I think we jumped to Skype and then we found this. Again, if you're just joining us, the first half hour here, not really talking about football, just want to do a pre-show, engage the listeners. I've been cooped up. I haven't left the house.
You've been cooped up, but I've been listening to football all day. So I actually have something to run past you guys.
All right, let's hear it.
So the Patriots kind of have a quarterback opening, but not really, right?
Brian Hoyer.
Exactly. The issue is they only have $6 million in cap space, and they don't have anyone they could really cut to do it unless they want to cut like Joe Thuney. I guess that's his last name. So,
wait, and I saw they, I think it was somebody from Spot Track or Over the Cap. They tweeted that they have like $26 million in dead cap.
Yep.
That it like. A big portion of their salaries are allocated to that, which that's just terrible management, in my opinion.
Yeah, Brady has like $14 million in dead cap.
Yeah, and
he's not even playing for him. So,
he's not. I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, I know it's weird. I think he went somewhere. I don't think we're going to talk about that at all because it's awful. No. Yeah, but I think, Justin, you brought up Jalen Hurts a little while ago, and I think there's a strong possibility that with their second round pick, they end up going rookie quarterback, the best one there.
I could see him doing it 23rd overall.
Yeah, really. They're going to have to.
That'd be crazy though, just to go from like old school football just to modern football, just like that.
Yep.
But there's going to be a lot of delusional Patriots fans thinking like, oh, we can still win it. But like, you're totally in rebuild. You have nothing. You have no tight end. You have hopefully soon to be alpha wide receiver N'Keal Harry, depending on his injuries and stuff. But you need. You gotta just rebuild, blow it up, get Jalen Hurts, give it a year or two, fix your whole entire.
Can you imagine if they would have landed Lamar Jackson at the end of the first last year?
They should have 2 years ago. Yeah.
Like I thought they were going to do it because up to that point, all of the other quarterbacks they were taken, and I'm sitting there. We had kind of like a live draft party, and we're up Lamar Jackson, and when he ended up going to Baltimore, obviously being a Steelers fan, I wasn't too thrilled, but so again, I see we have a few new people jumping in at 9:00. We're really going to kick off our show. Want to jump on here, do a pre-show, get out of my wife's hair here for a little bit. Justin just left us. He kind of had enough.
We're always waiting for Dan, so it's just another day.
He's a busy man.
He is very busy. Just ask him. He is the busiest man we've ever known.
Speaking of busy, we've been doing our projections.
Ah, yes.
And you have been pushing me, and we finally did it. So we have a really cool template. Actually, give me 1 second here. Here, talk about something for a little bit.
How about I talk about the projections?
Okay, well.
So one of the really cool things, and what's helping me out with it, is it's not really showing me the guys at the top end because we already know we're going to like Matt Ryan. We're going to like Lamar Jackson going into next season. But what it showed me is there's people that I absolutely hate. So I went in and ran through Melvin Gordon for the Broncos. I don't like Melvin Gordon at all. I think I have him about as an RB3 as far as what season long's going to go. And there's no way you're going to be able to get him at an RB3 price.
No. And I think we both learned that we like Todd Gurley more than we thought.
Yeah, I had to scale his back quite a bit because I went to the season total. I was like, oh, yeah, he's not going to get 300 touches again. So I had to scale it back quite a bit. And I still love him.
If he stays healthy, why not, though?
Yeah.
Devontae Freeman got 70 targets last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was looking at it. And so the final season total that I have for him, he would have finished RB7 this past year. And I think that's easily within his range of outcomes moving forward.
Yeah, I am. You were bitching at me because I'm going through my quarterbacks first. And then I'm going to, hold on, let's see if I can make this bigger here.
Bridgewater, I have him maybe as a middle QB2, but nothing I wouldn't be excited about him.
Hold on.
Like if you could find someone to buy Teddy Bridgewater right now, I think this is the perfect time to sell. Because he's not going to be a guy that's going to go out and throw 35 touchdown passes this year. That's just not what he's going to do.
No, I think I have him at 22 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on.
I have him exactly at 22 as well. And we didn't look at each other's projections at all while we were going through this. We have different spreadsheets and it just ends up, it matches up a lot.
No, and I told you that I did not look at any of your projections. And once I put a quarterback in, I went to your sheet and I only looked at the points. I didn't look at your inputs at all. And we lined up really, really well. And I think that speaks to the fact that we have a lot of co-owned teams too.
Yeah.
And, obviously the values match up. But here, real quick, I'm going to throw this up. It's probably not going to it's not going to look good on this screen because it's really tiny, but this is kind of what we're working with. This is the Josh Allen projection, but all the inputs that we're putting in. So just to shed some light, we're basing it really off of yards per attempt, touchdown percentage, yards per carry, interception percentage. So it's not just, yeah, I know, Dan.
You guys need bigger monitors. Like I can read all this perfectly.
I got
Dan jumps in here 17 minutes late and he think he has any room to criticize my fancy Excel spreadsheet here. But no, so, we didn't just go through this and say, oh, I think Josh Allen's going to have 250 fantasy points. What got us there? And this is the breakdown. It's based on usage. It's based on, historical data. And if there's any coaching changes that really played a role. So one of the big situations, the Carolina Panthers, while it's Teddy Bridgewater and he throws 440 pass attempts a season historically, what do you do with Joe Brady being the offensive coordinator? And Mitch, you said that Chicago was really challenging for you.
Chicago is tough because I didn't know how to break down the Nick Foles, Mitch Trubisky. I think Trubisky is going to start the season, but you don't know how long he's going to go. And that was my big issue with him. So I ended up having him start about 6 games and Nick Foles starting the other 10.
I did 4 for Foles. And I think it's a safe estimate. I think it's a solid floor. But somebody tweeted at me when I threw my first 11 or 12 quarterbacks out there. And if at any point during the offseason or the preseason, they name Nick Foles the starting quarterback, that's going to completely change my projection.
Oh, yeah.
Because if Foles is named the starting quarterback initially, I don't think he's going to relinquish. And I just realized that I have my little chintzy Excel spreadsheet up here. So let me get that off.
But even if Nick Foles is the starting quarterback there, I don't want him. That's not a quarterback job that I really care about having. I'm never going to want to start him. If he's on my team, I'll be like, oh, it's a bye week, Phil, but that's it.
Yeah, but I mean,
who's he going to throw to? He has Allen Robinson, who is awesome.
That's all you need.
Then they have nothing else. It's all you
Jimmy Graham.
Yeah,
maybe they'll utilize David Montgomery in the passing game. Probably not, but and they have Tariq Cohen, all 5'6"
sure
of them.
Do.
All right, Dan, finally you joined us here. What's going on, buddy?
Man, here to disrupt the show. Good to see you guys. Ready to go again. What's going on here? What have I missed?
Absolutely nothing. So I keep telling all the people that pop in, I see a few more people are in here. Up until 9 o'clock here, we're just kind of here to bullshit. None of this is going to make the iTunes feed, but it will be on our YouTube channel. Obviously, it's on Twitter live right now, and it's just an excuse for me to actually socialize with people outside of the house. Earlier tonight, my wife and I, we did a Zoom chat with her family. Social distancing. We don't want to get anybody sick, so just in case, we're staying home.
Hey, you're high tech there, man. You're zooming it up. You're live streaming it here tonight. You're doing all kinds of good stuff. Hey, what about a shout out to our boy Pat James there? Did you touch on his roster at all? I know you mentioned it on Twitter there. And
no, I didn't. Here, so Dan and I, we are in a 12-team Superflex league. It's one of the Scott Fish safe leagues, and I can't get enough. And actually, Scott reached out to me and he asked me, John, why do you what draws you to safe leagues? Why do you keep joining them? Because at this point, Mitch, I'm probably in 18, 20 of them?
18? Yeah, you've actually passed me because I started in his leagues a year before you.
Actually,
you need a therapist? Or
last year was
Right.
my first year in the league, in safe leagues, and I'm up to 18 or 20. But I said it's just the ease of access, and that a league's never going to shut down. And while we constantly play in leagues, Justin, we're already in a few leagues together, and before a couple of weeks ago, we weren't in any leagues together. Mitch and I think on GroupMe, we have 35 shared chats. That's how many leagues we're in together. And then Dan, we've gotten you up to about 12 or 15 leagues, but it's always nice for the safe leagues because you're bringing people in that you don't know, and it's just a completely different outlook. Whereas the leagues that we're in, it's the same people over and over again because we can't get enough of it. But anyway, so this roster, it's a 12-team Superflex league. It is tight end premium, 2 points for tight ends. And let's start with the quarterbacks, guys. He has Ryan Fitzpatrick, Nick Foles, Matthew Stafford, and Pat even admitted, he said, I'm a DFS guy. Dynasty's new for me. What are your thoughts there on the quarterback situation? I know my thoughts, and I kind of shed some light on Twitter, but Justin, with those quarterbacks in Superflex, how would you feel about that?
I mean, hey, I got Ryan Fitzpatrick in that Dynasty Theory one. I'm in with you guys. I'm all about the Ryan Fitzpatrick for a 1-year rental kind of thing. Stafford should bounce back. Nick Foles, like you said, should hopefully at least start 8 games this year. I'd be surprised if he didn't. So manageable. When I look at the quarterbacks, I'm like, you better have something else down there, in the skill position players that pop out for me. Because if you don't, then that's a problem.
All right, Mitch, what are your thoughts? Because Justin, I've seen your quarterbacks, and it seems like you're okay fading quarterbacks. So I might just boot you out of the chat right now.
Hey, I got Mahomes and Dak in the other one we're in.
No, that
good.
one's okay. So, Mitch, if those are your quarterbacks going into the season, how do you feel?
Well, that's the issue. If it's going into the season, I'm going to dread it. But we have 8 months between then and now. And in 12-team leagues, it's not really
8 months. It's March 23rd. So assuming everything goes out with a hitch, are you starting your season around
I
Thanksgiving?
never said I was good at math. It's around 8 months. But we have a long time before the season starts. So I wouldn't be worried at all, especially because I've seen the rest of his roster, and it's really stacked. I know he has George Kittle. He could go trade George Kittle for any quarterback not named Lamar and Mahomes, and he could get a quarterback right then.
Now, here's the issue. I'm looking at his roster in our league, and Dan, I'm going to throw this over to you. He doesn't have any 2021 picks. They are long gone. So let's say he runs into an issue with his quarterbacks. Let's say I lied. I'm looking at the wrong team. Actually, I was looking at your team there.
Of course,
you
Dan
don't have
doesn't
any
have
2021 picks.
He doesn't believe in them.
All right,
Guess my
where is he
religion.
here? Pat James. All right. Okay, I take that back. Pat actually has his full collection of 2021 picks. But let's look at the tight ends. And I don't know, for me in these leagues, I attack tight end. I attack it hard. It's 2 PPR. Dan, how in these leagues in tight end premium, whether it's 2 PPR, 1.5, how are you looking at tight ends? Because he has George Kittle and Zach Ertz. I would feel fantastic in a 2 PPR league with that.
Yeah, he's driving Des Bryant's Bentley here with that tight end premium with George Kittle, Zach Ertz, and man, Ian Thomas on the bench is not too shabby either. So he's at a great advantage. You mentioned he could trade Kittle to anybody, gets whatever he wants. He probably doesn't want to do that. I'm sure Kittle's his guy. So then you go and trade Zach Ertz if you run into a little bit of a quarterback problem, and you're still sleeping well at night knowing Ian Thomas is your backup. So he positioned himself real nice there. I mean, I wouldn't sleep too well at night with his quarterbacks, but like Mitch said, the rest of his roster allows him a lot of options. You know, his number 1 draft pick last year, this looks like a roster that could compete if he manages his team well. So, you know, that number 1 might not be too high, so he may have to trade for a quarterback at some point.
And I'm going to tell you where he can find one. Right over here with the Bauer Club.
I set you up. I didn't realize it.
I hoarded quarterbacks here. So I'm going to start off. I have Jacoby Brissett, Brian Hoyer, Jalen Hurts. And then I have Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Carson Wentz. And I acquired 3 extra 2021 firsts and an extra 2021 second. So this isn't me bragging. I would never want to do that. Dan, as you make a face. But I am very happy with my team in that league. I'm not going to lie.
Everybody in our league now has like John Bauer bulletin boards that we throw darts on during the day as he just went quarterback crazy. But I see your strategy, John. You went in with a very unique strategy of quarterbacks, tight ends, draft capital, and still landed yourself some guys that's going to make you competitive. So it's going to be fun to watch how your roster evolves.
I know for a fact that I'm probably going to be blacklisted in that league because in the chat I was getting a lot of negative responses, and if they were looking at me face to face, I'm sure there were some eye rolls there. And before we really jump into the show tonight, again, I see there's some more people in the chat. We just want to jump on early, do kind of a pre-show. Again, more or less, it was just me being bored. If my wife would have allowed it, I would have been on tonight, probably during work, but that definitely wasn't going to fly. So one last thing about this team here. Give me 1 second. So we're looking at Pat's team. Justin, his running back situation: Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner, Chris Carson, Mark Ingram. Would you feel okay here, March 23rd, heading into 2020 with that core?
I mean, it's looking more like a redraft team with those kind of running backs. I think Chris Carson's going to be hurdled over by a rookie running back this draft. I think James Conner, you could also see that possibly in round 2 or 3, depending on it, but he may have one good year left. Zeke
Mute him, John. Mute him, John. No, just kidding.
Oh.
Sorry, Justin.
Zeke's good. I'd probably look into trade Zeke to try to maximize my value, but you got to keep Zeke because Dan's on the show. I'm not going to crap on Zeke.
It wasn't even a Zeke thing there. It was John and I are Chris Carson truthers.
Oh, you guys really? I'm so sorry. That's an awful thing to be a truther of.
But when I got him, he was like running back 28. So I'm okay paying that price. He allowed me to capitalize and profit in 2019. So I'm actually going to write him a nice letter. So if he does lose his job here in 2020, I'm going to say, Chris, you served your purpose, and best of luck with your future endeavors.
Good luck. Yeah, I sold Chris Carson this past year. I got Michael Gallup in a 2021 second or 2020 second. So I'll take that all day before.
I mean, Michael Gallup's going ahead of Chris Carson in startups right now. So if it was a 1-for-1 swap, you're fine.
I don't know. I'm okay right there. And running backs are solid though. I would be looking to. You can't really move Carson, Connor, or Ingram for that much. Maybe Carson if you have truthers out there because he does have some truther status guys. But Zeke, you can get a lot back for. I agree with Dan when he said selling Ertz. I think that's probably the move over selling Kittle because you don't really want to move Kittle.
Nope.
I feel like no, I want a Kittle, but Mitch has to be in the league and snipe me right in front of me.
Yep.
Thanks, Mitch.
I mean, in those leagues with 2
Trade up.
PPR, and he's 26 years old. He's a mid-first round draft pick in startups. And if Mitch is in the league, he's not making it past 106 probably.
Nope.
It's stupid. I was there. I didn't want Michael Thomas, and all of a sudden Kittle goes right in front of me. Like, oh, that's great. My first tight end premium league. I was hoping to get my boy George Kittle, but nope, I get Michael Thomas.
You can come pay for him.
Well, I'll do Michael Thomas and someone else for him.
Your whole team.
Oh, my team's trash.
Oh, well, maybe not.
All right, guys. So we're going to transition here to the actual show and actual, my show notes. We didn't have him last week. Dan, he was in an outrage over there, but they're back tonight. So don't worry. Justin, we probably have a minute and a half here before we kick into the live show that makes the actual iTunes feed. What are the sunglasses for? Is your future too bright over there? What's going on?
It's just a look. It's a show. I got the sunglasses on. I got a championship. No, it's not championship. It's just a Dirk Nowitzki jersey on. Like, I don't know. I'm not even a Mavericks fan. Yeah. Well, why not?
All right. Any other random questions here in the chat? Again, we are going to be 1 minute here. We'll roll the music and we will really get started on the show tonight. Talk about free agency. And I'm excited because actually I'll wait for the show before I announce what we're going to do tonight. Oh, it's a big secret.
Uh-oh.
All right, so we're just gonna have a minute of dead air here.
Hey, dead air is the best air.
As long as Dan's not talking, I'm good with it.
Hey, I gotta be like that.
Can we talk about my haircut some more?
No one cares about it, John.
I don't know. I wouldn't have the balls to do it. Honestly, that's what happens.
So before we jump on here, the only reason I did it is because I know we're not leaving the house anytime soon. My hair grows so quickly by the time we leave the house, it's going to be fine. So if I had to go to work this week, it would have not happened. Somebody asked Bachelor update. Man, we might have to have a full show on that. Pilot Pete, he blew it. My girl, what was her name, Mitch?
Function.
Hannah Ann?
Hannah Ann. Yep.
Oh, I liked Hannah Ann. I liked her.
Believe it.
Yeah, she seemed like a nice girl.
Very nice.
All right, you guys ready to rock and roll? All right.
Welcome to Dynasty Theory, your source for everything Dynasty Fantasy Football, with your hosts, John Bauer,
Looking to sell everybody price dependent.
Dan Lamagna,
Too much dysfunction in Cleveland.
and Mitch Sorensen.
Well, it's hard to compete with excellence.
Welcome to another episode of Dynasty Theory. Once again, we are live on Twitter and YouTube. I'm your host, John Bauer. You can find me on Twitter at The Bauer Club. Thank you to everybody that stuck around. We did kind of a pre-show before we jumped on here. Half an hour of pretty much nonsense. We talked a little more football than I anticipated. I thought it was going to be a little more random conversation. We did get some Bachelor conversation in there, and I said that we'll have to have a full show just on that. But as always, I am joined by Dan Lamagna. He's shaking his head over there. That is at FF Coach Dan on Twitter. Dan, what is going on?
Great to be talking football. A little sad Travis Frederick retired tonight, but a slight uptick in free agency. Not much, but it's something to talk about. So let's go, JB.
Yeah, I just saw that. Breaking news, an hour ago, at 29 years old. And that's going to be a big hit to the Dallas offensive line. But we don't want to talk about Dallas tonight. We have talked about Dallas, I think, about 17 weeks running. So, Dan, as always, thank you for being on the show with us. We are also joined, as always, by Mitch Sorensen. That's at DynoMC on Twitter. Mitch, how are you holding up here? You're still going to work. You are not in complete isolation. I guess you're critical to the state of Utah, apparently.
I guess, and it's been really nice. Wife's going to have to be home with the kids soon. The kids are already home. Grandpa's taking care of them for me, and it's okay going to work on those days.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too bad. Like I said, about 15 times on the pre-show, I've been working from home, and it's been nice. You get some additional time with your wife and your son. But man, 7 months old, he is tough. As soon as I turn my eyes away from him, he goes nuts. The kid likes attention. I don't know where he gets it from because I don't like that type of attention. And you can see him here. His future is so bright. He has his sunglasses on. Once again, we are joined by the host of the Father-Son Fantasy Football Show. That is Justin Toth at Justin FSFF. Justin, I guess we couldn't get rid of you last week, huh?
You guys just wanted more. I'm like, can't complain. Very fun show. I get to argue with Mitch, John, and of course Dan, But hey, sad day for Travis Frederick. Hope he gets as well.
He'll be all right. He'll make it through, I'm sure. So we had you on last week, obviously, and you graciously jumped on about 15 minutes before the show. We had a last-second cancellation. So, again, thank you for that. And then you were scheduled for tonight, so we thought, why not have you on back-to-back?
It's like the World Series, John. He pitched it. He came out of the pen last game for us. He was clutch. Now we need him to start tonight.
I don't know. It looked like a blown save to me, Dan. It looked like a blown save to me.
Was that some sort of hockey analogy?
I think it was golf.
Baseball. What's baseball? I don't know. All right. So before we get into the show tonight, we're still giving away the Saquon Barkley autographed jersey. And Mitch, you want to do it, probably coincide it with the draft, correct?
Yeah, as long as the draft happens as planned and it doesn't get pushed back. We're going to be doing a live show at that time while that first round is going on. And we'll be giving away the jersey sometime during that live show on that Thursday night.
So to be qualified to win it, leave a 5-star review and send us a screenshot. We are on Twitter. We're on Instagram. It's at Dynasty Theory FF. We're very easy to get a hold of, so don't be shy. All right, guys, let's get right into it. The last few days, they've been a little bit slower. So we want to talk about free agency. And on last week's show, we had some big things to talk about. We obviously had the DeAndre Hopkins and David Johnson trade, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins. So there was a lot to talk about last week. And we really wanted to dive in to a few items here tonight. And we want to talk about the dynasty impact of some of these free agency signings, trades, a few key acquisitions. And in one case, in Mitch's case, we're going to lead off with it, maybe a lack thereof. So if you look on Twitter, and I actually posted a poll today, I said, would you rather have Devin Singletary or the 107 in Superflex? It was about 72% in favor of the 107. Everybody is saying sell Devin Singletary because the thought was, well, they're going to look to add a running back in free agency. Jordan Howard, Melvin Gordon, Devontae Freeman. He's still floating out there. But now everybody's talking about them adding a running back via the draft. And there's a few things here. And Mitch, I'm going to turn it over to you because you want to talk about Devin Singletary here and what we're doing with him moving forward.
Right. So part of this is a lot of these guys' ADP already has that built in. Their market share is built in, whether we think they're going to get 40%, 50%, 60% of that rushing share, it's going to be built in their cost to begin with. And right now, Buffalo only has 2 running backs in the roster. They have T.J. Yeldon and Devin Singletary. So they're going to bring in someone else. They were always going to bring in someone else. But I think as soon as Melvin Gordon didn't get signed there, we saw a whole bunch of posts pop up on Twitter. It's like, oh, just wait. They're going to draft a rookie, and the rookie's going to overtake Devin Singletary now. Wasn't that the exact same thing we said about Devin Singletary taking over for Frank Gore last year? So at what point are we going to allow the rookies to actually be the main guy and say that they're going to hold their value instead of immediately saying, oh, wait, they're a year older now, so now they're a sell because Zach Moss is going to come in and take over for them? I think we're constantly selling guys before we even give them a chance to produce.
Okay, so your thought here is you're not selling Devin Singletary.
No, not at all.
All right. Dan, what are your thoughts here?
I'm leaning towards selling. Some quick hitters here Mitch makes great points, but I think they're bringing in somebody via free agency. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Carlos Hyde signs any day now. Freeman's also out there, Lamar Miller. The Bills are going to pass the ball. Josh Allen's going to run the ball. They just get Stephon Diggs. And to me, Singletary just seems like that smaller running back that never gets that full buy-in from the team, whether it be a Phillip Lindsay type. I just see him sliding in the draft for me if we had a startup right now, and I'd rather, get a Carson or Connor that we were talking about in the pre-show, or Le'Veon Bell, who we're going to talk about later on, or probably even going wide receiver and sliding somewhere else with running back. So I'm selling, or I'd even take that 1.07 you were talking about, JB.
All right, well, you're not getting the 107 for Devin Singletary, at least based on that poll. It's going to slide back 109, 110. So people are saying that they'd rather have the 107, and they talk about the running backs that they would take there. Are they not guys potentially that are going to fall into a running back by committee? People were saying Cam Akers, and we talked about him last week. We talked about him a few weeks ago. I like Cam Akers, but if he goes to Atlanta, is he not going to be in a committee with Todd Gurley in year one? So it's funny that we're discounting Devin Singletary so much. He's going running back 19 on DLF ADP. Is Miles Sanders probably not going to be in a committee again? He's going running back 11. So what's the difference? Devin Singletary was just as effective. And I see Justin shaking his head over there. Devin Singletary was one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL last year. So obviously, Justin, you have Devin Singletary as a sell then?
I mean, you just said Miles Sanders and Devin Singletary in the same sentence. That's just
no. That's disrespectful to Devin.
That's disrespectful to Miles Sanders. You can get that another time, but very efficient last year, Devin Singletary. But running back 19, I have him in my 20s. I'd rather have the 107, the 108, the 109, the 110, the 111, the 112, the 201, the 202, the 203 in a Superflex draft. I'd even get later in the second round, maybe depending on these landing spots, but he's a sell for me.
Who are you taking at the 202 or 203?
Denzel Mims, Jalen Hurts. I'll take one of those, depending on landing spot, obviously. Like right now, it's tough to say. I mean, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire falls into the second round, he gets into a landing spot that's appropriate. I don't know. Devin Singletary, I just don't see him being like the long-term solution for Buffalo.
But he showed last year that with less than 50% of the running back touches and opportunities, so we're talking about carries and targets, he was highly efficient, highly effective. Is he a bell cow? I don't think so. And I never thought he was, especially heading into the 2019 season. And we knew it was going to take some time. But let's say another running back goes there. Whether it's a Clyde Edwards-Helaire or maybe it's a Carlos Hyde via free agency. You're telling me that Carlos Hyde's going to negatively impact Devin Singletary's value that much, and you're more willing to ride with Chris Carson, who's also going to be supplanted here in 2020, Dan?
I don't think Carson is going to be supplanted. That's why I say that. I think Seattle has invested too much in him and Penny, and I think they ride that train.
They invested a
little bit longer.
draft pick in him.
They didn't invest anything in him yet.
He's their guy. He's going to come back healthy, and he's just a bull. And I think he starts, and then they hang in with Penny a little bit longer. So I don't know if they do take another running back. And if they do, them or Buffalo, it's going to take a while for that running back to develop. Unless Buffalo does go all in and we see a DeAndre Swift or, Jonathan Taylor, that kind of guy, then maybe it changes the tune a little bit. But I'm not seeing that. I think they're all in, win now. They sign a Carlos Hyde. And then I would ask you, JB, about draft strategy here. What are you looking for in Singletary? Are you looking for a guy just for running back depth, or are you taking Justin's approach of looking a little bit more long-term and he's not the guy? So, where does he, for me, I'm selling because I'd rather invest somewhere else. I'm not saying I don't like Devin Singletary. He was efficient last year, but he's not a guy I'm excited about because I don't think he's a long-term answer, as Justin mentioned.
What about
how many running backs are long-term answers?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Is we're comparing him to Chris Carson, who's probably going to be out of the league in 2 years. I mean, more than likely.
Let's not get, because I'm still
more than likely
he
won't be he won't be fantasy relevant in 2 years. He'll be Carlos Hyde, to where you could start him a few times, and then 2 years from now he's not going to be. Devin Singletary is in the exact same situation now, and honestly, Miles Sanders is in, I would say, a worse situation than Devin Singletary is this year.
And the Bills are going to commit to the run. And here's what drives me crazy. And Justin, after I go on my little rant here, I'm going to bounce it back over to you for some secondary thoughts. Everybody is saying he's a sell. If everybody and their mother says a player's a sell, when does he become a buy? Because for me, Devin Singletary, last week, 1 week ago, I said through startups up to this point, I have not acquired Devin Singletary because I do have a little bit of concern. But at this point, he's slipped. I know we said 19th in DLF ADP. He's going 20, 21, 22, 23. And you're getting players like, Le'Veon Bell, Chris Carson taken before him. I think there's more risk for those players than Devin Singletary. Give me 2 years out of a running back. I don't think we should be projecting any further. But, Justin, I want to go back to you. I'm not saying that Miles Sanders, it's not a skill question. I think Miles Sanders is very talented. But his situation is very similar to Devin Singletary. So if the Eagles bring another running back in, because they're not going to run with him and Boston Scott, are you selling Miles Sanders too?
I'm not selling Miles Sanders. I'm buying Miles Sanders.
No matter what.
Now, so you're going to buy Miles Sanders at running back 11 price? Is that not? That has to be close to his ceiling, right?
I just bought him in the league.
What did you pay, if you don't mind me asking?
I gave up Juju and a 2021 first for Miles Sanders and Allen Robinson.
Oh, that's a great deal.
Okay, I was expecting you. That's not an overpayment.
I'm not that dumb. All right. I mean, with Singletary though, I'm buying, selling, and holding. It depends on what you're willing to get.
So you might say it's
up in the air. Yeah, I would say price dependent too. But I was thinking, like I mentioned, Allen Robinson. So if you pair up, Singletary for a wide receiver for Allen Robinson and a lesser running back like Tony Pollard, who I like a lot. I like that deal. Maybe packaging a better wide receiver with Singletary to get like a DJ Moore. Because Singletary is not bad. He's a young running back. He showed some promise his rookie year. Third in juke rate, like you mentioned how efficient he was. Third in big run rate. I like him. I just don't like him that much. I'd rather have other guys around his price. And I think you're probably holding him more likely than selling. Or if possible, buy low. But I feel like someone has Singletary, they're not really trying to sell him.
See, I think people are trying to sell, but the price, and we always talk about the buy and sell values not lining up. I think that's a big issue here. Again, I posted the poll on Twitter. 107 won handily, and I would never sell Devin Singletary for 108 or lower. Again, if you're looking for a running back in that range, it's going to be somebody in a committee. Dan, you have your hand up over there?
I'm stuck a little bit on Mitch's point about Miles Sanders being in a worse situation there. So
Okay.
he's a second round pick where Devin's a third. He's 5'11", 211. He's got some size. He holds on to the ball. I mean, he is the Eagles guy, where Bills have been a little more wishy-washy on giving Singletary the rock there. How is he in a worse situation, Mitch?
Not in the second half of the season.
I will completely disagree. The only reason why Miles Sanders got run is because Jordan Howard got hurt. That's the only reason why Miles Sanders ended up getting more playtime. Whereas you look at Frank Gore and Devin Singletary, like John said, Miles Sanders is a better running back than Devin Singletary. But Devin Singletary took over for Frank Gore because they were giving him more work over Frank Gore.
How old's Frank Gore, though? Come on, I mean, he's the GOAT. I love Frank Gore, but he's pretty old there, man.
How old is Jordan Howard?
Young.
He's only 26, but he's had a lot of work on those legs.
And yeah,
they let him go.
But Frank Gore's age has nothing to do with the way Devin Singletary played. That goes to the coaching staff. All right. You know, you look at other situations and it's like, why did a certain running back why did Kenyon Drake not get used in Miami? It had nothing to do with Kenyon Drake's skill. And it's the same situation with Devin Singletary. You can point to him being the issue, but it wasn't. And eventually they saw that he got used in the second half of the season and they made the push there to the playoffs.
Do you draft him before Miles Sanders, JB?
No, that's completely different. I love Dak Prescott.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying he's in a better position. There's lots of guys that are in a better position than Miles Sanders
Patrick Mahomes.
So you would draft the guy in a worse position, Mitch, is what you're saying.
I'm not
saying that I would take him over Miles Sanders. I'm just saying he's in a better position for this upcoming year. And if we're going to
Miles Sanders.
Yes.
So why would you take I don't know. I'm stuck a little bit.
But they're going 6 rounds apart, Dan. They're not even in the same ballpark.
To bring this back to Singletary a little bit, my issue is I would take like Cam Akers over him. I could see doing that. I can't say taking Dobbins or Jefferson or Herbert, Edwards-Helaire over him. So that's kind of where the problem is. That's like right at the 109 range. And no one's really selling him for the 109. So I don't know if I'm really buying him more than what his price is, but I'm definitely not selling him for that price. And a lot of people I think are trying to sell him for just sell him for a late first at this point. And there's just no way that I'd be willing to do that.
Agree there.
I wouldn't sell for a late first. I mean, I thought 107 was realistic, but clearly it's not. So in startups at this point, I'm okay with Devin Singletary and acquiring him. I'm not actively looking to pick him up in existing leagues just because there is the chance. And I do think Buffalo brings somebody in, but I think Devin Singletary can be effective and be a back end running back too, over the next 2 or 3 years with the workload that's expected. And Justin, he got booted here. Hopefully he bounces back. All right. So any other thoughts on Devin Singletary? Anybody in the chat? I don't know. Obviously we have varying opinions here. I think he's a tough buy for sure, in existing leagues, but I'm pursuing him in startups right now at the point that his price has dropped. Mitch, Dan, any other thoughts here on Singletary?
I think it's a good analysis by all of us as far as price points. We're all looking for him at different points, and it gives our listeners some different views. And unfortunately, poor Justin here is bowed out. I think he must have blew out his arm. I gave him too much credit in the beginning of the show, pitching back-to-back games.
I started yelling about Miles Sanders, and he just left. But one thing with I can't remember. I was going to bring up something with Singletary is completely lost it now.
That's fine. Again, this is the magic of editing. Yep. That part's not even going to make the show. All right, so Dan, we're going to jump over to your guy and Tom Brady. Obviously, this happened in the middle of the week after our episode last week, and we want to talk about him. Probably not so much about Tom Brady as it is the weapons around him. What are your thoughts here overall on Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay?
For fantasy football, I think it's a little bit of the rebirth of Tom Brady here. I'm putting my coach's hat on when we talk about this tonight and comparing a little bit, as we're hearing a lot of conversations between him and Jameis Winston. And I've been hearing a lot of, certain guys not being – maybe their stock going down a little bit with Brady at quarterback. And I want to argue that a little bit tonight there, as I'd be equally as high on Chris Godwin and Mike Evans going into this year, higher on O.J. Howard. Looking at their stats from last year, Tom Brady, 373 of 613, completions to attempts there, 60.8%. Winston there, 380 attempts to 626 for 60.7%. So their percent completion is about the same. But then when you compare weapons, it is night and day here. Let's just say Philip Dorsett is Brett Perryman for as far as a deep threat. Chris Godwin could be Julian Edelman, okay? But then the Mike Evans to whoever was the other receiver, whether it be Harry, Gordon, Myers, who were either injured, learning on the job, what a boost for Tom Brady. And then the tight end to go from Ben Watson on his last legs to OJ Howard. I'm starting to get excited about Tampa Bay here. It's an organization that's the NFL worst win percentage in history at 38%. Haven't won a Super Bowl since 2003, but I'm a little bit of a Bruce Arians believer, man. I think he's bringing the Bucs back. And when you look at Winston's 30 interceptions, think of all the drives that ended that could have been more yards, could have been more touchdowns, where Tom Brady protecting the ball, only throwing 6 interceptions. I think Brady's touchdowns go up. I know his yards per attempt is, you're saying, hey, he's not slinging the ball downfield, but Brady's a game manager, and he's going to be careful. And I wouldn't be slinging the ball downfield to Philip Dorsett and Ben Watson and so. All right. But you give me Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and OJ Howard, I'm going to have guys open all over the field. So I think his, if you're looking at an over-under of 4,400 yards, I'm going to roll the dice and take the over as long as they could keep that O-line improving. They signed one tackle here, the Joe Haig, O-lineman from the Colts. He's a very utility guy that could play anywhere on the line. So I think they're starting to build that. Hopefully they do so more in the draft, and we'll see what happens the rest of the free agency. But, Tom Brady, definitely QB3 in my redrafts, or dynasty drafts here, startups. I want him backing up both my quarterbacks. And if I slide on quarterback a little bit, he's my QB2. I'm okay for, I think, 2 years now.
All right. Mitch and I both just
you
about
scared me for a minute, man.
We thought you meant QB3 in redraft, like quarterback 3 overall.
No, not overall. Not overall. Like I'm getting, a Mahomes, Lamar, Watson, Dak early is my one guy. And then my number 2 is going to be somebody a little bit younger. And then I'm hoping to get Brady there. And I have 3 nice quarterbacks in a super flex format. But for some reason I want to slide, and Brady's my number 2. I think at least for 2 years, you got someone really relevant in Tampa Bay.
All right, so I'm going to play devil's advocate before I bounce it over to Mitch. And there's 2 things you brought up. One, it was comparing their completion percentage. And we all know Jameis Winston through the 30 interceptions. We know he struggled at times. You look at Jameis Winston, he was second in the NFL with 10.5 intended air yards per attempt, meaning he's going down the field with the ball. Tom Brady was down at 7.6, which was near the bottom of the league. So again, and we talk about numbers all the time, and numbers don't lie, but they can tell a certain story, and you can manipulate them a little bit. That 60% completion percentage for Jameis Winston, all of a sudden it looks a little bit better than Tom Brady's. Granted, he didn't have the weapons, but he still had those. Everything was underneath for him. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit deceiving, Dan.
That's where I think the numbers tell one story, but I think the quality of players tells another. And I think Tom Brady was doing what he had to do to win football games with limited weapons, where, Winston has these air yards, but that's all he's doing. He's missing guys wide open in the middle. He's not utilizing OJ Howard. And I think he just made a lot of mistakes. So I think Tom Brady, with those weapons, finding Chris Godwin and Mike Evans even more when they're open, utilizing OJ Howard, taking some pressure off, I think he puts up solid numbers this year.
Now, one more thing, Mitch, before you have added over there. And again, I'm going to play devil's advocate because I agree with you to an extent. But Tom Brady, if he's under more control, lower interception percentage, longer sustained drives, okay. But they're not going to fall behind like they did in 2019. As a result, they were forced to throw the ball. Now, that was also with Ronald Jones at running back and, the great Peyton Barber, probably surefire Hall of Famer. If they draft somebody, if they maybe even bring in a Devontae Freeman for cheap, you don't think they utilize the running game a little bit more? And with Tom Brady not turning the ball over, they don't find themselves in the hole that they did under Jameis Winston?
I think they still have to score with that defense. I don't think this is like a ground and pound team by any means. And again, I think in New England, who do you throw to? And I watched those games trying to get the ball to Philip Dorsett, and he's dropping the football. Harry making some rookie mistakes at times. He made some progress, but it was very slow. Josh Gordon couldn't stay healthy.
If I'm contending, I'm certainly holding him. I want him as my quarterback 3 or even my quarterback 2 if I'm, obviously stacked everywhere else. I do think he has a really good season, but it's going to be very interesting with that offensive line. He was very spoiled in New England. You look at adjusted sack rate, the Patriots were 5th last year at 5.3%. Tampa Bay last year, 22nd, 7.6%. And you can point that to Jameis Winston's decision-making and maybe not getting rid of the ball. But I do think that's going to be something that the Buccaneers have to look at. They have a 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 2 4ths, 5th, 6th, 7th. So they have a full complement of picks here. And I think that 4th, it probably was a comp pick that they picked up there. But it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. I hope they spend time and money focusing on that offensive line. Any other thoughts here on Tom Brady before we go? And Justin, he is back. Before we go to Justin's thoughts here on a player he wants to bring up.
I think Tom Brady is going to be a top 15 quarterback this year. And if I have Kirk Cousins in Dynasty, I'm selling Kirk Cousins and someone else for Tom Brady and a big upgrade.
Well,
I can.
Say that again? Because I think something got lost in translation there. You're selling Kirk Cousins plus for Tom Brady in Dynasty.
Well, no, Kirk Cousins plus for Tom Brady and a bigger plus.
Okay.
I'm trying to get like an Amari Cooper type player.
Yep.
Or even better, like a Tyreek Hill kind of type player.
And in a 14 or 16 team league, you can definitely get an upgrade there.
Jameis Winston sucks. That's what we're talking
Well, I mean, we're sitting here March 23rd, and he still doesn't have a job.
Winston's the backup quarterback this year.
Yeah, so, it's going to be very interesting to see how they Justin, you're still really lagging over there, man.
Of course.
Yeah. JP, just touching on that Winston comment that Justin made, though. If the New England Patriots do not jump on a quarterback, he is out of a starting job this year. I don't see anyone else, as I'm looking at my quarterback rankings, giving Jameis Winston an opportunity to start. Now maybe he's a backup somewhere and someone struggles or injury and he ends up getting an opportunity. But as of right now, he's a QB2 this year in my rankings.
I was going to tweet this out earlier, and it was in relation to Robbie Anderson, but it applies to Jameis Winston too. At what point do these players that they're sitting there without a contract, at what point do they say, all right, I have to take a pay cut, I have to be a little more team friendly? Do we think Jameis Winston goes that route? A 1-year dirt cheap prove it deal?
He probably will, but he's still going to be a backup. You know, I mean, maybe he gets some money like Mariota did to be a backup, and they tell him there may be an opportunity at some point for you. Robbie Anderson's, the receivers, they're going to have to take less money, I think, at some point, but he'll end up starting to be a solid fantasy producer. I just don't think Winston's going to get an opportunity.
There's still the Chargers and Miami, who both still need, as much as they like Fitzpatrick, Miami has the money to go and pay Winston for 1 year if they want to. The Chargers are in the exact same position, so they can. Although I know we all say, hey, they go and get a rookie, or they can also just go and get Winston and not have to use a draft pick on a rookie.
I think that would be a curveball, Mitch. I mean, you're spot on. There are teams that could do that if they take a shift in planning, but I see them going the rookie route.
Yep.
At this point, I'd be shocked if Jameis Winston lands a starting job, and I'd be especially surprised if he goes to the Chargers. In my opinion, they ride it out with Tyrod for year one, and once again, he's a bridge quarterback. Why are you signing Jameis Winston? He's not going to win you a Super Bowl. As much as I love Jameis and I love his gunslinger attitude, why not have Tyrod play year one or pull the plug halfway through the season and bring in a Tua?
See, that's what's going to happen. I think they'll pull the plug on Tyrod halfway through the year. I would be shocked if he gets more than 4 games.
See, Tyrod could keep the Chargers in games and give them a shot at competing. And while this young quarterback behind him is developing, if the young quarterback's ready late in the season, awesome. If it's not till next year, they could live with that. You go with Winston, he could throw interceptions till, again, you're out of the hunt before you know it.
I think we all have this really good memory of Tyrod in DFS. We played him every week because he was super cheap. But as far as being an actual NFL quarterback, there's a reason why he got dumped from Buffalo and never started a game after that.
But he was competitive in Buffalo, Mitch. Like, he kept the team like as a fringe contender. Now, you knew he wasn't going to take them all the way, but at least he's familiar with the system, could keep the team competitive versus Winston. You have the learning curve and the issues with interceptions.
It's true.
If I'm the Chargers, I stay the course. I ride it out with Tyrod, and I attack the position in the NFL draft. If I have Tyrod, I'm probably looking to package him in some type of trade, whether it's a quarterback upgrade. The issue is we play with a lot of smart people, and hopefully they're not listening to this. I don't want to toot their horn too much, but we do. And you talk about players like Devin Singletary, Tyrod Taylor, and you say, oh, they're a sell. Well, people really aren't paying that much for them right now. So either you're going to have to take a hit in value or just ride it out, and hopefully somebody pulls the trigger early in the season if they think Tyrod Taylor is the guy moving forward. But I'd be shocked if they don't attack the position in the rookie draft and they bring in a player like Jameis Winston. So the Buccaneers, they're going to be talked about all offseason. And unfortunately, because this came out midweek last week, we're late to the party. I know a lot of people talked about this, but it's the situations we're going to see all offseason. Chris Godwin, value spike. Mike Evans, he's worthless. Cameron Brate, OJ Howard, they're going to see 350 targets this year, and Ronald Jones, he's going to be the next James White. He's going to get so many dump offs. So it's going to be things to look at. And if you feel strongly one way or the other, and you can take advantage of those value spikes or, drops, I say do it. So it's definitely something to pay attention to. And Justin, finally back. I've been watching you. I think you may have figured out your glitches here, but let's go back to the Buffalo Bills. And it's funny because I asked you guys, I said, bring up a guy or a situation you want to talk about from a dynasty perspective. And, let's talk about how it's going to play out in the dynasty implications. Mitch came to me with Devin Singletary. You came to me with Stephon Diggs. And I'm always one to talk about the Buffalo Bills. So I have no issue with it. If it gives me a reason to talk about Josh Allen, let's go. So Justin, Stephon Diggs, he was moved for what many would call a king's ransom to the Buffalo Bills. What are your thoughts on the trade overall? How do you see it impacting Stephon Diggs? And what are the changes here in Buffalo? How do you see it playing out?
The trade, obviously, I think seeing it after the fact that the DeAndre Hopkins trade went down, you're like, all right, what the heck's going on here? But in reality, like if Hopkins were to go for this, I think he'd probably be worth more than this. But I think Diggs is the best route runner in the NFL. So I don't care. Like, I don't think you overpay for it because you're getting a proven talent who's only 26 years old. So I like the trade for Buffalo. However, I think it decreases Stephon Diggs' value. And this is coming from the biggest Stephon Diggs truther and supporter. And, he's my guy, my favorite player in the NFL. But I think it bumps him outside the top 20 of wide receivers for me. And you have him at wide receiver 18 right now. I think for ADP is where he was going, but probably now possibly an increase. I don't know if you have the updated one for that.
Yeah, so that was the most recent ADP that DLF had. And it's always funny. I think everybody looks at Buffalo. They're a running team, right? Last year, you look at the splits, 519 pass attempts, 465 rushing attempts. So what, 53, 54% in favor of passes. But we see it time and time again in Dynasty. A player has a new team and instantly there's hype, there's excitement. And it's interesting because he's going from Minnesota, who's also a run-heavy team, and he's going to Buffalo, a run-heavy team. I actually don't think it changes his value too much. You talk about air yards, Josh Allen, he's willing to air it out. And it's going to be interesting to see how Stephon Diggs and John Brown, they're obviously lining up on the outside together. I mean, I guess Cole Beasley's on the inside. And this is all if they don't bring in another wide receiver. I think there's probably fewer targets, but we're going to see more air yards overall for Stephon Diggs. So I actually don't think it changes his value. I'm not going to greatly reduce him, but I'm certainly not going out to buy him just because, I think most people that have Stephon Diggs, if they wrote it out last year, they're truthers, just like you talked about, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get into a Josh Allen debate with you. So Rocket Arm Man himself, he's gonna just launch the ball deep, which is gonna increase Stephon Diggs' air yards. But the ball is going out of the stadium. It's not gonna matter for me. That's where I'm at with Josh Allen. So you're going from Kirk Cousins, who's pretty accurate, to the Rocket Arm himself. So Kirk Cousins was 5th in true completion percentage last year, compared to 33rd. That's right, 33rd. There's only 32 teams in the NFL, I think.
No, I think that's a typo. That was probably 3rd, right? No.
4th in play action compared to 24th, 10th in deep ball with 57 attempts to 33rd in deep ball. But, 72 attempts, like you said, he'll definitely launch it deep. And 8th in pressure completion to 34th. And then this one's just hilarious. He gets 6th in complete and clean pocket completion percentage to 34th. How does I don't get it. Josh Allen's got to hopefully increase his, accuracy. And Diggs had 93 targets last year. I want him to get to that 130 mark, but I don't think you're going to see that here in Buffalo. I think you're going to probably maybe 110. But in reality, how much better are those targets compared to what you were getting from Kirk Cousins, who I don't even like that much? I'm rooting for Josh Allen now because I have to. As my Diggs chooser status, I'm hoping the best for Diggs. But I think just the whole narrative also with the wide receiver going to play with a new quarterback, you got to build that chemistry. It takes time. It's not going to happen in year one. So he's a sell for me. He's probably wide receiver 23 for me. I probably have Gallup over him now, which is not easy for me to say, but I may take, yeah.
So here's my issue, and Mitch, we're working through our projections, and I just got to Josh Allen, and I think they run the ball even more this year, and I love Josh Allen, but I'm looking at my early projections here, and I have guys like Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford over him, and I have him right around 445 pass attempts. I don't think it's going to be that significant, and Diggs is going to have to put up a 25% target share, and as good as John Brown was last year, he didn't even see that type of target share. So it's going to be tough to really think Diggs rises in value at all. Mitch, not so much Diggs, but how is this going to impact the rest of the offense? So let's talk about John Brown and Cole Beasley. Obviously, aging veterans, you can get them later in the draft. But from a short-term perspective, 2020, what do you think their outlook's like?
I think Justin brought up a great point with the quarterback chemistry. Josh Allen loves John Brown. We saw that play out all year long, and I don't see that changing at all. I don't see how that could change with a new wide receiver coming in, even how good Diggs is. I think it is going to really hurt Cole Beasley, though. Cole Beasley is going to be able to get those, third down passes when they need 5 or 6 yards. He'll be there for that. But I don't think there's any way he's going to get above like a 15% target share. And one of the big things for Diggs is his TD rate's going to have to be enormous for him to be really fantasy relevant every single week. We could talk about target share, and the target share is going to be there. But like you said, Josh Allen isn't going to throw that many passes. So Diggs is going to have to convert whatever he can into touchdowns. And if he doesn't have an 8 or 9% touchdown rate, it's going to be hard to even have him as a wide receiver 2 in your lineups.
Now, I want to clarify really quickly. So DLF ADP had him at 18th. I didn't have him there. I was taking him later, and most likely I wasn't getting him because I wasn't willing to pull the trigger. So when I say I don't see it changing his value, Justin, you mentioned maybe you have him like wide receiver 23 range. That's probably right around where I had him before. So I think his ceiling right now is wide receiver. It's back end of wide receiver 2 range.
Yeah. I mean, hey, hopefully Josh Allen gives him the ball. I think like Josh Allen's value has to increase. I may take him over Stafford now because of the rushing ability and the fact that you do have Stephon Diggs, but I can see Josh Allen being top 12 this year. I haven't done my quarterback rankings, but yeah.
Well, I mean, he did it last year. He did it at the end of the season 2 years ago. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have him as your top 12, I don't know if I trust your list, Justin.
I'll have him in the top 12. The human highlight reel himself, Josh Allen, awful for real life football, but good for fantasy. Those are the kind of quarterbacks I like, but we'll see.
I remember watching that playoff game, and I actually multiple times I threw some words out there that I won't repeat on the show tonight because it was like, what is he doing? Dan, so we're talking about Stephon Diggs here, John Brown. Do you think there's any chance that out of these 2 receivers in 2020, John Brown is the more fantasy relevant option?
I wouldn't rule it out. I have mixed feelings on how Diggs fits in Buffalo right now, and I can make a case either way. I think Justin and Mitch both made solid points, and I probably lean their way based on the facts that they laid out for us. When you look at Buffalo now, I am more encouraged about Josh Allen in the passing game. I mean, you look back to last year. We were talking about Smokey Brown, who's a little bit underrated, but he's not a big target. Cole Beasley, we know what he is in the slot. Who else do they have? Duke Williams, Isaiah McKenzie, who they just cut. Robert Foster, for some reason, never materialized to see the field. So they didn't really have a number 3 wide receiver. So from that perspective, they've got 3 legitimate receivers that could get open and make plays. But I'm a little surprised that Josh Allen hasn't gotten that big target that you kind of think he needs because of the style of quarterback that he is. So how does that fit in with 3 smaller wideouts right now? Now, is it play into his strengths. He likes to run around. We might see some explosive breakout games where Josh Allen's scrambling around and Diggs knows how to get open and does his thing. So we might have a few breakout games. Maybe they're more for DFS than Dynasty. I'm not sure. And I also see that Buffalo's all in. They're going for it. I think we all agree that he had to get out of Minnesota for whatever reason. Diggs was getting his own head. He was kind of like getting like OBJ there, very disgruntled where he was at. And I think that was impacting his play a little bit. You know, OBJ was pretty mild-mannered in Cleveland. It's a little shame we didn't get he wasn't healthy, so we don't really know how that's still going to play out. So where does Diggs fit in this year? He's happy. He's content. He's got a quarterback that can move. You know, I probably look at the Fantasy Pros rankings and put him a little bit closer to 24 than 13. And I guess that's where I land right now.
And it seems like out of the four of us, that's probably consensus here on Dynasty Theory. My big issue is the amount of targets to go around. I see fewer pass attempts here in 2020 than I saw in 2019. And I like Josh Allen, but he's actually, I've gone through 12 quarterbacks here in my projections. He's actually a little lower than I expected. And I know he's going to give you the rushing upside, but we actually saw that come down a little bit here in 2019, and they want him to throw the ball more. I want to see him run the ball more. So, you know, any way you look at it, overall, I don't know if anybody's looking at this thinking, oh my goodness, Stephon Diggs, he's skyrocketing up my draft board here. I just don't think it's the case. So while it's not significantly worse, it's definitely not better in my opinion.
For another show, John, boy, I can't wait to see what happens in Minnesota. If they don't get a stud receiver in the draft, you know, losing Diggs, I think is going to hurt them more than they know.
I think it's going to be a wide receiver one.
I would be surprised if they didn't attack the wide receiver position in the draft, especially with this extra draft capital.
And watching Minnesota in years past, you know, Treadwell never materialized, and I watched him drop so many balls, and that OBC Johnson last year's average at best. You know, I'm sure Irv Smith will be a little bit better this year, but man, Cousins can't scramble. You lose Diggs now. They've got to find a way to replace that production.
And really quick, before we move on, we have a comment here. Somebody landed Stephon Diggs in a current startup at 607. I'm assuming that's a super flex startup. Wide receiver 24. Again, right where we're talking about. I would feel comfortable taking him there. I think the talent's there. He's young enough. But you get any further, you know, than that, wide receiver 23, 22, 21. I don't know. It starts to get a little bit interesting, and there's probably some better options. I'd rather have Calvin Ridley than Stephon Diggs.
Oh, yeah.
And like you said, Justin, I'd rather have Michael Gallup than Stephon Diggs.
It's sad times. I better have rookies over him right now, too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I take Justin Jefferson over him.
All right.
You're gonna see.
I should have said Jalen Reagor. My bad.
There you go. Now you're talking.
See, I'm learning.
I don't know what it is, but and this is getting sidetracked a little bit. Reagor's actually he's not going too high in startups right now. I got him in the 9th round, I believe, in a super flex startup.
Yeah.
So wide receiver 29, 30. You know, so
right now.
I know. But yeah, if you look at startup ADP, I'm guessing CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, those are the guys going ahead. You're not going to see Ruggs go ahead of him, not yet from what I've seen, but depending on landing spot, heck,
yeah, wait till May.
What if Ruggs
all
goes
these guys
to
will be going
Minnesota?
to the 2nd round?
Well, I don't care where Ruggs goes. He's no, you're taking Diggs over Ruggs. I'm not risking with that.
No, I'm not a fan of.
I'm just not going to rookie hype.
Just playing devil's advocate. So again, we talk about all these interesting situations. Buffalo, it's going to be one to look at because obviously we talked about Devin Singletary, talking about Stephon Diggs. How does it impact the passing game? Again, I see fewer pass attempts here in 2020. I love Josh Allen, but I'm going to need to see a little bit more here in 2020. I haven't been able to buy him at all because I'm not willing to pay that price, but that's probably a conversation for another day. One more thing I want to bring up, and I haven't really seen anybody talk about this, so I'm going to say get on the bandwagon with me. And I actually didn't make one of these little cool scrolly things at the bottom. I completely forgot about it, and it's my take. How bad is that? You know, the New York Jets, they are improving that offensive line. Le'Veon Bell, he was horrific last year. 3.2 yards per carry. It was the lowest out of a running back that had at least 240 carries since Todd Gurley did it in 2016. So it's been a few years since we've seen that amount of volume and that little efficiency. I think this year it's a big bounce back candidate is Le'Veon Bell. And I think Sam Darnold, he's going to benefit. We look at the offensive line moves that the Jets have made. George Fant, Connor McGovern. I want to say Connor McGregor there, but I caught myself. Greg Van Rotten, Josh Andrews. They re-signed Alex Lewis, and they have the 11th overall pick in 2020. I don't know. I know Le'Veon Bell. He's over the age of 23, and that's already when you start to fade running backs, right, Mitch? But he's 27 years old. He might as well be dead in Dynasty. He has one foot in the grave. So he's somebody that I've been targeting in startups. And, as bad as he was last year, I care about volume. He had 245 carries, 66 receptions. He's going to continue to see targets unless they somehow revamp that wide receiver core. And, obviously they're going to make up for Robbie Anderson most likely being gone. But Le'Veon Bell is somebody I have my eye on here this offseason. Do you guys have any thoughts here? I'm going to open it up. Dan, Le'Veon Bell, what are your thoughts?
I think Joe Douglas is in general manager role there is bringing some talent in. He's starting to have a little bit of a plan, so there's nowhere to go but up in New York there. I think, in watching Bell last year, I almost felt bad for the guy. I mean, there was just no holes. There was no lanes. His effort was there. He did what he can. So I think, John, your points would definitely solidify him as an RB2 this season. He's closer to the top 20 than those, the worst case scenario Fantasy Pro ranks of 30. So I do like him this year, definitely RB2. As you know, I'm still not excited about Adam Gase, and they've got to find another offensive weapon in that at the receiver position, whether it's even if they bring Robbie Anderson back, I could see them drafting somebody. They've got to get a little bit more help and firepower for Sam Darnold to kind of open the run game up a little bit. So I think he's on the upswing, and I think to your point, you could probably get him at a nice point right now, and it'll help your team win games this year. And I'd leave it at that.
Yeah, they're looking to improve the big weakness, the offensive line, and they're making steps in the right direction. So it's just somebody that I'm interested in. And, I talked about Sam Darnold. The Jets were 30th in adjusted sack rate at 9.2%. You bring in all these free agents. Obviously, it's going to take some time for them to mesh, but I certainly like the direction that they're going. Mitch, do you have any thoughts here before we move on?
I know you brought up Le'Veon Bell, but the real person we need to talk about in this offense is, of course, Jamison Crowder. I mean, if we're going to bring up the Jets, I'm going to bring up Jamison Crowder every single week because he is going round 13, round 14 in startups right now.
He's free.
Yeah. And he got, 120 targets last year. That was with Sam Darnold missing all those games because he got mono from going to some high school dance or whatever happened. But go get Jamison Crowder. He's one of those guys who's free, who is going to be able to be your wide receiver 3 every single week, and he's just a plug and play. You put him in, you don't worry about it, and you move on. And those are the guys that I really like on my team.
I think he's a wide receiver 2 this year.
Mitch might have gave the fantasy tip of the night tonight with Jamison Crowder, because, I mean, if we think about our past drafts and past years, how many times, guys, have we been 1 year off? Like for some reason, there was something we liked about Crowder last year. Gase was pumping him in the preseason. He gives the offense juice. He's the one guy that gives us that. And it just didn't all come together. But now with a little more O-line protection, as you're pointing out, JB, this could be the year where you're getting him at this late value and he gives you better production and helps you stream and win a couple games here and there. So that could be a great tip tonight by Mitch. Kudos, man.
Thanks,
now,
dude.
this could change once I go through our projections because I haven't gotten to running backs yet. But I'm going to say if he gets 245 carries and 66 receptions, he's going to be a high-end running back too. And it's just, I want volume. I don't care. What was that, Dan?
He was like the hot blonde that like stood me up on a date, and I haven't been able to get over it. But Mitch is like being the good friend tonight and saying, Dan, let it go. Let it go. He's better than that. Give him a chance. So I'm going to give Crowder a chance after tonight's show, thanks to Mitch.
All right. And Justin, will you give Le'Veon Bell a chance?
I think, like you mentioned, like RB2, and he's gonna get the volume. But I did some looking up on these offensive linemen they brought in, and they all kind of suck. But
That's a great point. It's true, dude. It's really true.
So like quick little like stat bits. So George Fant, last year when he didn't play, the run success rate went up 12%. And then Greg Van Roten from the Panthers, when he was off the field, the sack rate went down a lot, and then it's just not a good situation.
Well, okay, let me ask you though. So who were the quarterbacks there for the Panthers in those situations? What was going on with the running game in Seattle? There are other variables here.
You got to ask Chris Carson that one. I mean, I don't know. I also got Kyle Allen. Yeah, I mean, well, it's not great. I mean, hopefully it's better for Sam Darnold and Le'Veon Bell's sake. I think the slot man, James Crowder, is a big benefactor. He's one of my favorite buys this whole entire offseason because people just don't credit him for what he does. He gets targets. He's in the slot, and Sam Darnold likes him. So 1 + 1 = 2. You get the guy, wide receiver 2/3 every week. And
how excited would you be if I said, hey, you're going to get a wide receiver in the 13th round. He's going to have at least 120 targets this year. I'd be absolutely thrilled.
I would have to do something. I would have to hold like an event or some kind of party for that. Yeah, I mean, I'm all game for that. You tell me that, I'm like, who is it? Jameson Crowder? No.
Have some type of Jameson Crowder gala. So, we talked about the Bills a few times with Devin Singletary. Do they bring a running back in? The thought is yes. And how are we acting based on that? Are we buying, selling? The community saying sell? At what point do we start to transition when everybody else is screaming sell? Maybe it's a hold or a buy. And then we talked about Stephon Diggs, obviously a new home in Buffalo, and Tom Brady. Huge impact on what's going to happen in that offense. And from a dynasty perspective, Tom Brady, he's a perfect plug and play super flex option. Let's say even quarterback 18, you're going to be thrilled to get him. That was a floor there, Justin. But quarterback 18, I think you're going to be thrilled to get him where you are in startups right now. Now, before we sign off, we are kicking off the first ever Defend Your Tweet. So, Justin, over the last few days, I went through your Twitter timeline here, and I said it was tough because you retweet a lot of things, and you don't always have takes on Twitter. But I found one. And for this, you put the sunglasses back on. I'm going to throw this up on the screen, and I'm going to read it out loud here so the people not watching, they know what it is. This is back from October of 2019. Are you ready? And you have no idea what it is. So
I have no idea what it is. I'm with the
you're
viewers
clenching over there. You are terrified.
I gotta make more takes on Twitter is what I'm learning from this, but I'm excited to see this October take. Let's see how.
I had to go back to October, but here we go. So the first ever Defend Your Tweet. Here we go. October 27th, 2019.
Oh, look at that.
Listen,
33 likes.
At 3:44 p.m. And I looked at it. This had to be the back end of their game. Zach Ertz was the easiest fade in drafts this year.
Hold on.
So on October 27th, he had 2 catches for 20 yards. Guess what he did after that? 9 catches, 103 yards. 9 catches, 94 yards. 12 catches, 91 yards. He finished his tight end 2 in full PPR. So Justin, defend that tweet.
I'll defend that tweet and redraft. That's what we're talking about here. So easiest fade for me because he was going early 3rd round, sometimes before Kittle. And I was like, you're joking. The only guy I'm taking here this early is George Kittle.
He finished above George Kittle, though.
Yeah, but it wasn't as fun to have on your team. I feel like, you're more consistency. I think George Kittle won you weeks rather than Zach Ertz, but I think Zach Ertz had one good game in the playoffs. Don't quote me on that. But he was going in the 3rd round. I was saying fade him all offseason. I'm like, don't take Zach Ertz in the 3rd round, especially in like a non-tight end premium league. You're going to want to take a skill position guy there. Joe Mixon was going to end his 2nd round last year. I mean, obviously he didn't do that great early on, but he came on the later half of the season. You see guys like Tyreek Hill going later 2nd round when Zach Ertz went. Zach Ertz went at the 209 in one of my drafts, and I was like, you have guys on the board. I'm trying to think who would run that. Amari Cooper range kind of type players, Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen, and all these quarterbacks in Superflex, but people are taking Zach Ertz that early. And I think the big thing I was trying to say was you're not taking him at that price. If he falls into the 4th round, maybe consider it, but I'm just not a big Zach Ertz guy. I think that fade him again this year. I'm selling.
No, I think that, Justin, I think the big thing you were saying was on October 27th, he had 2
after
catches
he had a bad game,
yards.
and I was like,
and that's called recency bias.
That is called recency bias. But at that point, that tweet was very accurate.
It was, and then he got literally. He must have read that because you sparked a fire under him. 11 targets, 14 targets, 6, 13, 10, 6. And he just tore apart the second half of the season. And you mentioned he only had 1 good game in the playoffs. Week 14, 9 catches, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. I don't know. I see that as a good game. Week 15, 5 catches, 61 yards, 1 touchdown. So I'm just saying, Zach Ertz was a fade for me going into the season, but I just love the timing of that tweet. And that's how much time I'm putting in here for all these different goofy segments.
Yeah.
I literally went back to October on your timeline. to find you bashing Zach Ertz, and he looks back at you and says, "Screw you, Justin. Screw the father-son fantasy football podcast because I'm going to put up monster numbers the second half of the season."
I think his father was probably yelling at Justin that week. So you can only get mad at half the podcast, not the whole thing.
All right, so we'll leave the father portion out, but he was saying screw the son part of the podcast.
There you go.
Most people do.
All right, well, Justin, again, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously we had you on last week, but if people didn't tune in last week, let our listeners know where to find you, what you're working on, talk about the podcast.
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Twitter at JustinFSFF. I'll be having some more Dynasty takes, just more takes in general. I'm currently working on better Wi-Fi because this is very annoying tonight. I come back home and, I'll leave my dad out there trying to make the Wi-Fi stable. I come home first night doing the podcast, and the thing cuts out. I reset it, update a firmware. What's going on over here? So McDonald's Wi-Fi is a new thing, but the podcast is Father Son Fantasy Football. Find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Podbean. We're doing one episode a week. We have a Dynasty episode coming this week. So, check us out.
Well, again, thank you so much for jumping on. And the magic of editing, nobody's going to know that you disappeared throughout the show. So don't you worry. As always, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Dynasty Theory FF. Have a great night. Wow, that was awful. Hold on. For the recording, and there's only a few people watching here. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Dynasty Theory FF. Have a great night. I like